Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody back to another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. UFC Fight Night from the UAE, or as other people call it, Pastimes, the desert, happened this past weekend. Fun card, not a lot of finishes, but, I think somebody definitely is standing above the rest in that lightweight division. We'll see what happens moving forward. I was at the PFL from Nashville this past weekend. We'll kind of dive into that great experience. Going to look forward 2 weeks. 2 weeks, we've got another pay-per-view from Perth, Australia. The much anticipated showdown of the middleweight king, DDP, versus his arch nemesis, Izzy. 2 weeks from now in Perth, Australia. To help break it all down, he's the man. Always watches a lot of MMA. We're going to get into it with him now. John Morgan, what's up, pal?
Hey, man, I'm just glad you could be here, man. I was sitting there watching you on TV. I'm like, look at Eric McMahon over there. He's just a big-time star right there. I'm like, I hope he's still willing to do this podcast, to put aside a little bit of time to talk with me, just a humble little guy that I am, because there he is out there on the big stage, man. No, I was glad to see you at the PFL. Fun event as well, and was glad to see you out there, getting another big opportunity, as you should.
Thank you. And I don't know who stole the headlines, whether it was Eric McMahon in the cage, whether it was Danger with a massive knee knockout, or if it was Big and Rich opening up the ESPN main card. Have you ever seen a live concert like that at an MMA event?
The only thing I can remember back to is remember Affliction back in the day did have a live band playing as well, but I hadn't seen that forever. And, it's cool. I was watching a little bit of social media and some people were cracking jokes, whatever, because it's not what you're used to seeing. But I love it, man. The PFL is trying to do different stuff, have some fun, entertain the people that are there. Like, why not have a little fun with it?
I'll tell you this. Everybody there, and it's not because it was Nashville. It could have been in LA. It could have been in New York. It could have been in Florida. It could have been wherever. They loved it, right? It was just a switch from the norm, and it just jolted some energy into the place, and it was just fun. I mean, listen, I don't think Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy is talking directly to like the MMA audience, but seeing something different in a high production value setting is fun. Like, I don't care.
Yep.
It is.
I agree. Who doesn't like a little live music? I mean, it's all about entertainment, right? You don't have to take everything so serious. You can think outside the box a little bit. You can do things a little bit different, especially if you're not the UFC, right? Like, if you're other organizations, you don't want to just be UFC light. You want to have a little bit of difference, have a little bit of fun, have some good times with it. So I enjoyed it seeing it. I thought the broadcast was good, but it was definitely you that stole the headlines. I mean, Big and Rich, that's one thing, but we're talking about Eric McMahon in there, you know what I mean? I was surprised, that you probably, they probably had to hold back the audience for autographs and photos and stuff like that. I'm sure it was a bit of a distraction. So I'm just glad that you guys were able to keep it professional there.
All right, now peek behind the curtain. I like to do this every now and again.
Sure.
I get there. I have the opening fight. I had fights 1, 3, and 5, right? So I get there, do my fighter rule meeting, got a cup of coffee, all, everything, my normal pre-fight stuff. Then and basically I have the card in my hand where my assignments, I keep it in my back pocket. Then, okay, locker room 3, go to locker room 3, do my pre-fight. Now the fight starts, right? And I get a text, John McCarthy. Hey man, just go out there, relax, have fun. Okay, awesome. After the fight, opening fight, amazing fight, right?
Yeah.
Kevin Sweet Pea Pease versus Nick Mech, both CFFC veterans, both guys that have potential to make massive headway in the big shows. Agreed. In this game. They are, both Agreed. Of them are phenomenal. And it was a phenomenal fight. Go back and watch.
Great fight.
I have the opening fight. I walk out just being like, bang, that was a burner of a fight. And I forgot the cage announcer's name. He's the Bellator guy. What's his name?
Right. Michael C. Williams.
Michael C. Williams walks out and he takes out his phone, and it's a text message from John McCarthy. And he says, tell Eric he did great. Get the white paper out of his back pocket.
That is phenomenal, man. I love it, man. John McCarthy is evaluating everything, not just your techniques in there, but how the uniform is fitting, potential distractions there. I didn't even notice the white piece of paper. Look at it. He's paying attention to all those fine details.
Here's the funny thing is like, listen, I'm diligent, watches off, nothing in my pockets. I'm completely, bare. And going into between round 2 and 3, I was just kind of pulling my pants up and I felt the paper in my back pocket. And I go, oh, shoot. So I kind of stuffed it way down in there so nothing could see. And I remember thinking in my head, John McCarthy is going to give me so much shit about this. Sure as heck, 5 minutes later, I walk out the cage and I see this text. And I was like,
that is hilarious. That's a great story. But hey, how glad are you to know that he's giving you that feedback after you passed his test? Had you failed the test in a notoriously difficult test, by the way, I mean, it is famous the number of people that have failed that thing on first attempt. It's almost not even like, it's like when somebody fails it, you don't even look bad at him. You just be like, yeah, man, it's high level. So, man, how about that? He's critiquing you, but he knows that you've got the knowledge because you passed. Round of applause there. Round of applause, man. Well done, sir.
Yeah, somebody was like, oh, did you have a doubt? And I'm like, yes. A lot.
It's a hard test.
It is. So I was pretty happy to pass the test. But so UFC PFL Nashville was a lot of fun. Yep.
And let me just say, since you were talking about Kevin Pease and Nick Mack, I'm going to speak to Kevin Pease later for Grind City Media. Obviously, a Memphis area product, getting things done. Obviously, a CFFC veteran as well. So all the ties are there. So I'm going to follow up with them, and we'll have that on Grind City Media later this week.
I do want to touch on this really quick, and I don't want to waste too much time because we do have to get into the UFC this past weekend and moving forward. We've talked about him, like we've seen a lot of him and a lot of Danny Barlow and a lot of these guys that now people are starting to hear these names. We've seen him in CFFC. I've repped him. You've called him. You've interviewed him. For a guy like Kevin Pease, where do you see his upside? Where do you see him going next? Because he was in PFL. I know it was a one-off fight. Probably didn't get a contract out of it, didn't have a long-term coming in. Do they see the value there and try and lock him up? Or is he the type of guy who's saying, you know what, I might want to wait for a Contender Series, get it there, go to the UFC? What do you think? Just crystal ball this for me.
So I had some conversations behind the scenes about Kevin. From what I understand, he's actually on an exclusive deal with them. So he is on a multi-fight contract with them. So what I would assume is maybe another showcase fight before the end of the year. Obviously you're not going to join mid-season. I guess you could come in potentially as an alternate, but I'm assuming they'd use somebody that's already in the season. So I wouldn't anticipate there. But I think maybe, as long as he can go out there and get another win, maybe they're looking at potentially even using him for a season next year. So big opportunities for him, man. I'm really happy for it because I feel like the upside is there for Kevin. I mean, as you said, I've gotten to see him up close, and I think he's got a lot of talent, but more so, it's just his work ethic and his awareness and all those things as well. So I almost like as much what I see outside of the cage as I do from the actual skills that he's displayed within it as well. I think his upside is high. So I'm anxious to see where he goes. But yeah, I think he's going to have some more opportunities with the PFL and maybe into that $1 million tournament next year. I mean, how amazing would that be for him?
That's super, super cool. He's a great kid, huge talent, great work ethic, great team at Killcliff MMA. And, you saw Michael Chandler there coaching him from his VIP seats, which means he's even got kind of that nod from, Michael Chandler. Awesome.
Doesn't hurt at all, does it? I mean, to know that that's the kind of guy that's got your support. Michael Chandler as somebody that can coach you in the gym, but Michael Chandler is somebody that you can just lean on for advice. I mean, is that dude like one of the most positive, inspiring people to be around? I mean, to have that guy in your ear a little bit, give you some advice, you can't beat it. That was cool to see, man. That was really cool to see.
That's the one great thing about working the regionals is me and you get to see these prospects coming up. And when they start doing big things, we're like, I remember them when.
It's so funny because I tuned in for the very start of that card. It was 3 p.m. here in Las Vegas when that thing got started. But I was like, I bet me and Eric are the only ones that are as fired up for the first fight of the night as anything else on the night. You're in there making your debut for the promotion. I'm in here, watching these two guys that have called fight. As you said, and let's not take away from Nick Mack either, man. That guy is going to be back as well. Nick, he nearly walked away with the first round finish. Man. It wasn't
it was a little bit controversial. I think the right man won by damage. Nick Mack didn't throw any punches in the third round, which cost him in his last loss from the CFFC. Same scenario, different fight.
100%. It is interesting that you say that because I scored it the exact same way. And John McCarthy and Dan Hardy actually had it the other way on the broadcast. And I'm like, and I really thought to myself, I was like, am I letting myself homer a little bit here? Because, I do think Kevin is that talented. I don't think I am. I think I'm judging this.
AI scored it like you did.
I scored it that way as well. So I thought it was the right victory, the right judge's decision there. But great fight, man. Like I said, both potential. I was excited for that fight. I mean, for that to be the first fight of the night, it was a fun start of the card for me.
And by the way, the announcer said that Kevin Pease was holding the cage. I was specifically looking at it. It looked like he is, but Kevin is such a smart fighter when the commentator is like, he's clearly holding the cage there. He wasn't, truth be told. He was keeping a fist and posting it against the cage while he was throwing hammer fist. So from the back angle, you just look like, you know, because it's a fist, but he was such an intelligent fighter. He wasn't.
That's great. That's great insight. I wasn't going to bring that up, but I was getting a little mad when they said that. I'm like, leave my guy alone over there, man. Quit talking about my guy. They're like, the referee's not watching. I'm like, my man's watching. Shut your mouth over there. So there's the insight for you. I love it.
Sounds good. All right. This past weekend, UFC Fight Night from the UAE. You know what? Not a lot of finishes, right? Which we know our Uncle Dana isn't a big fan of. But Umar Nurmagomedov, UD over Cory Sandhagen. Umar, number 10. Nobody above him wants to fight. So, hey, tip of the cap to you, Cory, for actually taking that fight. But it does seem to me at this point, we don't need to break down the fight necessarily. You know, even though Umar, as the number 10 rank, came in as basically a 3-1 favorite in that fight. So shows us how much rankings really mean at the end of the day. Where does Umar go now? How long does he have to wait for that upper echelon? Is it a mandatory, top 3 title eliminator fight, or can we almost like hold him off a little bit and throw him right into the title picture?
Sounds like from what Dana White was telling Kevin Iole, Dana didn't actually make the trip out to Abu Dhabi, but he did have an interview with Kevin Iole that it's going to be a title shot next. And I think, honestly, the guy's deserving of it, man. I don't think, as you said, Cory Sandhagen deserves a lot of respect because I don't think there's a lot of people that want to fight Umar Nurmagomedov. But, man, I think it's going to be a title fight next. We'll see where the rankings will be out later today. I imagine he'll be at worst number 3, maybe even number 2. So we'll see. He's certainly in striking position for there. But I think what he does is he sits back and waits for Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili, and he takes on the winner of that. And I'll be honest with you, stylistically, and I know you feel me on this one, I want to see him and Merab Dvalishvili really, really bad. Not that I'm saying I don't want Sean O'Malley to win or that Sean O'Malley wouldn't be a great fight. Sean's a great fighter, man. He's phenomenal. But Umar Nurmagomedov versus Merab Dvalishvili would be a hell of a fight.
You want to talk about a bad stylistic matchup for both guys?
Right. Yeah, he really is. This dude, and I think that's what Umar is showing, man. Like his striking is really good, nice and fluid, really clean, really he's aggressive with it, and he's really nice and technical. But then those scrambles, man, his ground game is right up to par with it. He's so athletic and fast and creative as well. I really walked away from that. I was high already on Umar Nurmagomedov, but I don't think people did justly say, who have you beaten? And that's fair. It's not that he didn't want those fights. He just hadn't been able to get those matchups. You know what I mean? He was challenging everybody. But I walked away from that really thinking about, where do you game plan to beat this guy? I mean, normally you look at somebody and you can identify an area where you're like, I think this is where I see my guy susceptible over here. This is what we're going to do. Look, we hadn't seen him go 5 rounds before. Went 5 rounds incredibly. Looked like he could have gone another 5 if he needed to. So cardio doesn't seem to be an issue. On the feet against a great striker in Cory Sandhagen. He's holding his own there. On the ground, dominant in there. So I don't even know where you game plan to beat the guy right now. So, man, I love either guy, but I want to see that Merab fight at some point.
At what point are we going to start saying, are we going to stop saying that, these Dagestani, specifically these, Team Khabib guys, that, hey, you need to keep it on the feet? At what point are we going to stop saying that? I mean, the champ, right, Islam, outstruck Dustin Poirier. He outstruck him. I don't care what anybody says. Just because it was a little more difficult to get him to the ground and keep him to the ground, people said Dustin did great, and he did. But he still lost the striking?
Yep. 100%, man.
So these guys
are well-rounded.
Khabib knocked down Conor. And it may be that they are so scared of their wrestling that they lapse on their defensive prowess in their striking. It may be that. But at some point, we have to give credit where credit is due and say that these, Eagle MMA guys, these Team Khabib guys, they can throw down.
100%, but and it's what he said. It's what makes them. I think it's twofold. Number one, you say, hey, the opponent may be so worried about the grappling that they lapse defensively. But I also think it allows them to be so confident in their offense and their striking because they know if this dude shoots on me, good, let's go. You know what I mean? Like I'll out scramble him, no problem. So I don't need to worry about that. So now I can keep my hands high. I can keep my form tight. I can throw combinations, not just one shot and move away because I'm in fear of what's coming back. I mean, so I think it works both ways, and they're just really good. And I mean, their discipline and their training is unbelievable, right? I mean, it's like, they get up and they go to practice in the morning, and then, in the afternoon, it's let's go jog at the park or something to relax. Like everything they do.
Play soccer for 2 hours.
Right? Yeah, that's their downtime. It's like they're gonna go play. For me and you, we play soccer for 2 hours. Like that's the day. You're like, man, I sure am glad I got in a good workout today. I'm done. Like that's their downtime. It's crazy, man.
So, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this podcast does. Umar Nurmagomedov, 18-0, 2 knockouts, 7 submission, 9 decisions. And those 9 decisions, like, let's be honest. Yeah, a lot of people say 9 decisions. Those are painful decisions if you're fighting him, right? Yep. He's making you miserable the whole time. So I'm not a guy who looks at decisions and being like, it's decision. Like, I understand to get to the UFC, they want a lot of finishes, right? But if you have a guy that's just keeping you guessing the whole time, taking you down, beating you up on the feet, everywhere, it's just, I don't think it's your normal decision.
No, it's not. It's not like, let me just hold you here and not allow you to get up. And as long as I can hold you down, I'm going to win this. It's not that. It's actively, it's pushing you, it's mentally breaking you. It's all those things, man. I mean, the guy is fun. He's dynamic. He's excited. He's working on his English to learn that, to have some fun as well. I mean, this dude to me looks the part of future champion. Like I said, I think he's fighting for a title next. Either way, we know Sean and Merab are 2 phenomenal fighters. They both bring different things to the table. That's going to be a tough fight either way. But this dude looks the part to me, man. I think he's going to hold gold. If it's not in his next fight, somewhere down the line, this dude looks like he's going to be a future champion.
Okay, 3 things. We do got a lot to talk about. Izzy and DDP coming up, but there's it was hard for me to determine where we wanted to talk in this past card. Obviously, we got to talk about the legend, Tony Ferguson, retiring, or maybe, I don't know.
I love Tony. Only Tony.
He's like, the game's passing me by this, but if somebody wants to watch me, I'm going to give it to him. Like,
I mean, how about the fact? I don't know. I don't think. I mean, how about the fact he put one glove down, not both gloves down?
Yeah,
he's
like, he retire then unretire? Like
he basically said, look, I think his time in the UFC is done. I mean, I think, Dana White has said before, I think Tony needs to retire. I mean, they gave him obviously a long leash, and I know they have a lot of respect and a lot of love for Tony Ferguson and who he is and what he's done for the company. So I know they have a lot of love, but at some point they do have to make a decision, and I get that and I understand that. And I think they hope that he'll retire. I don't think they'll offer him another contract. Will he go somewhere else? We'll see. I mean, as he said, it was beautiful to see how much love he was getting in the crowd, because I'm a Tony Ferguson fan, man. It's been such an honor to cover his career and get to see him and talk to him all these years. And I'm a big fan of his, and I was happy to see that he got the love. Happy, by the way, that Michael Chiesa showed the class that he did, right? To say, look, man, and because that was a big win for Michael Chiesa too, right. Man. He had been on a losing streak there. So for him, you saw how emotional he was and talking to his family, but for him to say, I cede my time on the microphone to the legend that is Tony Ferguson, I thought that was a class act. So, yeah, it sounds like Tony wants to still compete, whether those offers are coming in, whether it'll be bare knuckle boxing that'll offer him something, who knows? But I don't think it'll be in the UFC.
No, I don't think it will either. I hope he hangs it up. He's got nothing to prove, but sometimes you can take the dog out of the fight, but you can't take the fight out the dog. And I think that's an example of Tony Ferguson. But another kind of, so Mackenzie Dern looks phenomenal. I mean,
right.
She looks phenomenal in many ways, right? We saw her aggressiveness, we know her grappling, her striking has come so far, and we see her getting in physically better shape every single fight. It's a matter of time. In my opinion, it's a matter of time for Mackenzie Dern if she stays on this disciplined track.
I agree, man. I mean, she's so dangerous, right? I mean, this was, by the way, phenomenal matchmaking. I mean, the stylistic clash between these two is fantastic, but she looks good. I think her striking is getting better. I think, her head movement, I think, can improve a little bit, but the jab is nice there. She's sitting down on her punches a little bit. So she's getting better in the striking department, and she's just got great skills, tenacity, the durability is there, the grappling skills are there. It's a talent-rich division. There's no question about it. I mean, there's some very, very talented fighters at the top of that weight class, but she's game for any of them. You know what I mean? She's game against any of them. Her skills match up well. So, great stuff from her, man. I thought she looked phenomenal as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Megaton Diaz being her father, the absolute living legend. She's a, IBJJF Nogi, or was it gi or Nogi that she won? Or both?
Gia. Maybe both. Yeah, it might
I know
both,
she won the absolute versus the big girl. What's
Gabby Garcia.
Gabby Garcia, she won the absolute, but
which is amazing in itself.
Right? So but anyways, with that being said, one other fighter I do need to talk about, and it's Alvarez, man. How good did this look?
Joel Alvarez is, I think maybe people are going to finally pay attention after this one. You know what I mean? I think he's a guy that was really, really flying under the radar. He's got an incredible record. He's exciting. He's finishing. He's had a couple of setbacks, but you look at the setbacks. Arman Sarukin, come on. Damir Usmagulov, who I think is a very underranked guy as well. So, I mean, the guy is a finisher. He's exciting. Dude, if Ilia Topuria and the UFC go to Spain, you got to think he's co-main event on that card as well. You know what I mean? I think people are going to finally start paying attention. I don't think he's going to break into the rankings just yet, but I think he deserves a ranked opponent in his next fight. And so that would give him that opportunity. But I mean, 21-3, 100% finish rate. That's incredible. Yeah. And by the way, Elvis Brenner is a dog. Like, that dude had an amazing comeback against Guram Kudataladze. If you'll remember that one, he's really hard to put out. And Joel Alvarez just kept pushing until the end and got the finish. So a dude that I think has been underappreciated, undervalued. I think maybe this was that moment that people go, oh, that's a name we need to remember in the division.
Now, you can win fights, and then you can win fights looking spectacular. And doesn't have to be like a flashy knockout or a brutal knockout, but that we've seen a lot of fights, John.
Yes,
I've seen thousands and thousands and thousands. I've probably reffed 500-600 at this point. You know what I mean?
Right.
He is like one of those fighters when you look at and say, he is so damn technically proficient.
Yes.
And not in just his strikes or movement, in everything he does, which is going to make him an extremely tough out for anybody in the world. Now, I know Sarukin did knock him out a couple of years ago, but he just looks spectacular. He looks it's effortless for him.
Effortless is a great word. Smooth was the word that I was thinking in my head, but effortless is even better, right? It's just everything. Like, you just got it. Like, it's one of those guys. Like you said, we've seen thousands and thousands of fights. There's some guys that if you didn't know their name, you didn't know their track record, you didn't know anything about their experience level, just the way they move in there, you're like, oh, that dude's got it. And Joel Alvarez has that, man. Effortless. That's a great way to describe it.
So I think in his next fight, he's either due for, let's say an ESPN co-main event slot, in an arena kind of co-main event slot, or I think he gets into a pay-per-view main card at this point. Like, I'm that high on him.
I absolutely think so as well. I love the call out that he had with Bobby Green. He said, we'll do no takedowns, no submissions. We'll just go and throw down. I'm sure Bobby would like that. I don't know if Bobby would make the trip to Abu Dhabi, where they were a little concerned about the merchandise that you take with you, shall we say. I don't think that he would necessarily want to compete over there, but we'll see. Maybe they could put it together somewhere else, because that would be a stylistically fantastic fight.
Yeah. All right. So we do have an Apex card this weekend. Anything we should know about? I know our local boy over here, Danny Barlow, is on the card. Ironically, I have reffed him and his opponent's making his UFC debut.
Have you really?
Yeah.
That's great. No, that's the one. I mean, listen, it's a main event between Marcin Tybura, Sergey Spivak. It's a rematch. It is ranked heavyweights. Neither one of them are big talkers. So, the media day this week, you're not going to see a lot of headlines out of it. They're both technically good at heavyweight and it will have impact in the division. But obviously right now at heavyweight, we know that there's a couple fights that need to play out. So there's nobody really making a rush forward.
Log jam, as we call it.
There's a little bit of a logjam right now as we wait for this whole thing to unfold and Tom Aspinall waits on his place. So, listen, I think there's some fun fights on as always. Javid Basharat versus Chris Gutierrez could be a barn burner. Chepe Mariscal, who I know you like watching him fight, Damon Jackson, those two guys are going to go at it. So that's a great one. But yeah, I think from a Memphis perspective, Danny Barlow making the return after the incredible debut, but the broken arm, he's healed up, he's ready to go. He's facing a replacement opponent. But this is another big step for him. Obviously, Danny Barlow, somebody that if you've seen him fight, you see the natural talent that's there. You talk about somebody that's got it. I mean, he's just got otherworldly athleticism and he's got that power. I got to see him come through CFFC, which is fun. We featured him here. I had a chance to speak to them a couple weeks back when this fight was coming together. So if you missed that interview and you want to get yourself ready for this fight, check that out on Grind City Media. But yeah, those are the things that you can look out for. No real big names. There's not going to be any big rankings impact after this weekend's card. But we're watching fights. That's what we do. What else are we going to do on the weekend?
Well, I'm going to be reffing and I'm going to be watching this card on my phone because I am very interested in that Danny Barlow fight, not just because he's a local guy and I reffed him a lot on the come up and his partner, Nikolay Verta. Help me out here.
Nailed it. Right there. You got it. Vertenikov.
Yeah, there we go. I ref both of them great fighters. But this Damon Jackson and then Jose Mariscal fight, listen, get on board with me and John Morgan about Mariscal El Chepe.
Yep.
Get on board with this guy. Win or lose, you are going to love to watch him fight. Just get on board.
100%. And let me just make the same impassioned plea for Damon Jackson as well, man. That Damon Jackson is just a dog. Like he's going to go out there and scrap. You know what I mean? So this was fun matchmaking. They knew exactly what they were doing here. This will be a good little scrap. I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah. All righty. So now we are moving forward 2 weeks. We are going to be in Perth. I don't know if this is going to be, first off, I don't know if this is going to be hometown cooking for Israel Adesanya. I think it may with like the tension between these two guys. But let's take a step back. Last time that Izzy was in Australia, Sean Strickland had the crowd in his pocket over Izzy did. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the case, right?
No, you're 100% right, which is wild because Sean Strickland, I mean, I think he's just such a character, right? I mean, he's outlandish in some of the things he says and does, but people have come to love him for some of that craziness. But this one, I don't know. You know what I mean? This one, I don't know about. We'll see. I mean, obviously, the rivalry has been about Africa, not about Australia, so they haven't been brought into it. But I'm interested to see how the crowd reacts. I really am interested to see how the crowd reacts because Dricus is a fun fighter, man. He's a really fun fighter, but there has been some wild tension. As you said, Israel Adesanya, from the area, not necessarily Australia, from, New Zealand. Obviously, you kind of, consider those nations together and link them together. But I am anxious to see how the crowd reacts to this in a couple of weeks.
Here, listen, I know we're going to get an awkward fight out of DDP. I think he's tough to hit if he's tough to hit clean because you can't predict where the hell he's going to go after he throws a strike. But if he lands, it's hard. Ask Robert Whitaker. With that being said, I'm really interested to see what kind of Israel Adesanya we get. Now, conventional wisdom is going to tell you a lot of miles, long layoff. Typically, when that happens, we don't see the best version. But it was a self-imposed long layoff.
Yes.
And it was because he just said he needed to get right. And I don't know why else. So I'm anxious to see, are we going to get that 2021, 22, early 23 Israel Adesanya? Or do you think there's a potential to see another guy in there kind of like we saw another Colby Covington after a long layoff. Kind of like we saw, let's just keep going down the line and line and line and line and line.
Yeah. That's the interesting question, right? And that's what you don't know. That's the big variables here, right? Because we have a lot of tape on both these guys. We've seen a lot of what they do and who they are. We know how their styles should match up, but we don't know how they're going to execute. And that's the great question, because if Israel Adesanya isn't, vintage Israel Adesanya in this one, I don't think he ever is again, right? Because he took some added time off that he needed, and I think it was deserved, right? I mean, the guy had been busy. He'd been put in big spots. And he was, he's a guy that's not only active in terms of fighting, but active in terms of how he promotes and how he does. I mean, this guy is like, he's carrying an event when he's on the event, right? He's putting on a show and everything that he does. So, I mean, it's mentally taxing as well.
He was fighting 3 or 4 times a year
against the absolute savages and studs. Like, he's fighting everybody, right? So he deserved the time off. So, that part of it doesn't concern me as far as I think it was much needed time off. But you do wonder, like you said, the miles is true. I mean, we're talking about the miles of an MMA career that follows the miles of a kickboxing career as well. I mean, this guy's been competing and has, hundreds of bouts at this point, hundreds of fights experience. So there is a question. But, the time away, I think, was needed. The motivation is there. I mean, the hatred and the tension between these two guys is real. And I completely understand where both guys are coming from, but I understand why they don't match up very well with each other in terms of, they're not going to go out and have a cold beer afterwards and say, hey, man, thanks for getting in there with me. Somebody's teaching somebody a lesson in this one. I think there's real bad blood and animosity here in this one. So motivation shouldn't be a question whatsoever. So if Israel Adesanya isn't able to show up in vintage form at 100%, I think you got to start thinking, will he ever again? Because everything has come together for this matchup, and this is a big moment.
But this is a guy that's going to be hard to look 100% against.
Yes,
because he's just an awkward, powerful dude. I mean, if you were to explain Dricus's fighting style, how would you even explain it?
Chaotic, maybe. Am I the word? It's a little bit awkward in the spacing, the rhythm. It's aggressive, it's powerful, but it is difficult to know. So I am anxious to see that. I would think that Izzy would have the speed and the range and the movement to deal with it. But you zig when you should zag against that kind of herky jerky unpredictability, and you're getting clipped by a big, strong, powerful dude. So it's interesting. Interesting.
We said that about with his bout against Whitaker, right? Oh, hey, a guy fundamentally sound as Whitaker. I don't remember the odds, but I think it was pretty substantial Whitaker, and the power of Dricus sat him down with a jab.
It's unbelievable, right? I mean, that's how much he brings to the table. Yeah, I'm looking at historic odds. Plus 260 was Dricus Du Plessis in that. So that just goes to show you how much favor was being given to Robert Whitaker, and deservedly so. But you're 100% right about that. But you do think of Izzy. I mean, certainly you could look at the matchups between Izzy and Whitaker and see how those went. I mean, I do think about Izzy being a little bit more elusive, especially, if he is vintage, like we think, a little bit more elusive, a little bit more master range, and dealing with that. So I feel like if he's there, he has the ability to do this. Not to say that it's a guarantee, because Dricus can knock out anybody. But I do think if he's in form, he has the ability to deal with it. It's just a matter of if he is.
I just see this as being, on his best day, a very difficult fight for Izzy. And I think I was saying it, a year and change ago when, this rivalry was really starting to build. And the reason is Izzy does really well with people who want to take him down. He's hard to take down. He does really well against those type of guys. And he does really well with somebody because he can pick up tendencies, he can pick up patterns, he can dictate his range, and he knows how to use his range as power at that point, right? He's a master at the two soft, bam, one hard. You didn't expect the one hard coming, now you're getting knocked out, and it's an accumulation. And the reason I think it's a little more difficult, and I think we'll get into it more next week to break it down, is though I think I'm pretty good as a fan and a guy standing inside the cage a lot of time picking up patterns. I can pick up fighters' patterns as a referee at what helps me get into good positions. I don't pick up any patterns against Dricus. I don't know. Sometimes he throws punches and he'll just shell up and come backward wildly. Sometimes he'll throw punches and run forward and like do like a complete 360 turn as his defense. And I'm not joking. He does that.
No, it's true. It sounds funny when you describe it, but it's accurate.
So it's hard. I think it'd be hard for a guy as skilled as Izzy is to pick up those patterns and tendencies to then be able to get off his own offense. That's just what I see from afar.
No, I think you're 100% right in that. Where I think the Izzy gets to make up for it is, like some guys are just so meticulous and studious in knowing, like they know what their opponent's going to throw before the opponent does because they've watched so much tape and they've identified so many patterns. And right. I mean, every athlete, every fighter is trying to not have patterns, but you do. You know what I mean? You can't see it. But your just body follows these routines. And some guys are so meticulous and studious, and Izzy is that guy. I mean, he does know his opponents. He does know their tendencies. But I do think he also has that kind of quick twitch, natural reaction. Like, I think the speed is there that he, even if he doesn't, as long as he sees it coming, even if he doesn't know it's coming, he still has the ability to the nice head movement, the little slip out of the way. Like, he understands angles so well and escape movements so well that I think he has the speed and the quick twitch to be able to deal with it, which that's why I think makes this so much more intriguing, because I do think he can slide out of the way, see it, identify it at the last minute, and move. It's just Willie. Like I said, if you zig when you should have zagged, you're getting clipped. So it's good. And I mean, this is one of those fights that we talk about these every now and then, that the stylistic matchup of it is intriguing. Like, if it was just, fighter A and fighter B with these styles going at it, it would be fun. But then you add in the fact that the title's on the line. Boom, now it just moved up a different level. Then you add in the fact that there is real animosity. Like, this is not some, hey, let's just say some things in front of the camera and then let's go backstage and be like, good job, man. We're going to make some money together. We really hyped this thing up. No. These dudes do not like each other whatsoever. Fight week is going to be tense, man. Everything. This fight has everything.
Is it just me, or does it not seem to affect DDP at all, though?
No, which is, I think DDP, to his point, I just don't think he thinks he's wrong in what he said, right? I mean, in the fact, and basically for anybody that hasn't seen the build up to it, I'm sure everybody knows, but he's basically said that he's the first real African champion. And he's like, I was raised here. I was born here. He says it. I walk on, African soil. I breathe African air, because he trains there every day. Now, there's a whole bunch of political discussion we could get into about all of that. But the thing is, it's like, you talk about Kamaru Usman, you talk about Francis Ngannou, you talk about Israel Adesanya, all have African roots. Their families did leave Africa because it's an incredibly impoverished continent, and they left those countries seeking better opportunities for their children and their family. But that doesn't mean that they're not still proud of their African heritage and their African roots. And so for all three of them, they see that as an insult to say, like, hey, man, just because we left because we were chasing opportunity and a better life for our families than what we came up with, that doesn't discount who we are as proud African men. And so that's where there's real tension. And I don't know. I mean, what Dricus says is not factually incorrect. When he says you guys all left, I stayed here, I walk on African soil, I breathe African air, it's all factually correct. But man, I mean, when you look at everything else that's involved in it, like, can't you understand that a little bit? Why they may take it as an insult?
I think you're not giving him enough credit, right? I think that he's masterful at irritating people.
Knows that it's gonna.
He irritated the hell out of Sean Strickland. That doesn't happen.
True.
Right? Sean Strickland said, listen, little girl, please move. And he jumped over 2 rows to get to Dricus. Right? True. And so I look at it from a part of, I said it and I meant it, and it wasn't meant to stoke this at first, but now that it did,
now I'm leaning into it.
I got you.
That's interesting. There's probably a lot more truth to that than I ever considered before. Like, because the way Dricus said it, like, I agree. Like, when he first started saying this, I never really thought that he meant it as any kind of an insult. But then I just always, when it was taken as so, I always expected him to come back and be like, hey, guys, okay, I apologize. I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry if it was taken that way.
Like, I understand the race component to it. Like, it should have,
right.
like, that's not the way I meant it, but he doubles down.
I know, but he never did that. And so you're right. At first I was like, is he just unaware that, like, of all the, like, surely you have to be aware of this, right? Like, you do.
Yeah.
But
and Dricus seems like a very likable guy. Like, usually likable guy.
He is every interaction with I've ever had with him, whether it be on camera, off camera, whatever, has been top notch. He is a great dude, a nice dude. I really like the guy as a person, man. I really do. And so I guess that's one reason I always expect him to be like, my bad. Like, guys, that's not what I meant. That's not what I was trying to go for here. But you might be right. I think the more I think about it, as you were describing, I bet that's exactly it. It's just like, oh, it pissed him off that bad? Like, oh, okay. All right, we got this now. We were going with it.
So cool and calm. Even with Sean Strickland, when Sean Strickland attacked him in the crowd, he was like, no, I don't like, he should do that. I have more respect for him now. Like, I really like Sean. Right?
Yeah.
And which just pissed off Strickland even more.
So great. Step aside, kid. I apologize. So great. I love that. Oh, that was a great incident,
and
man.
Then let's go back to where, like, almost the first time I ever heard of DDP, of Dricus. The first time I ever heard of him was through Instagram videos of some guy so pissed off at him in a title fight that they got into the fight at the weigh-in the day before. The guy was like saying how he had sex with Dricus's girlfriend and like making these all outlandish claims. And then Dricus goes out there and finishes him in the first, right? And so I'm seeing this pattern. Do you know the fight I'm talking about?
I don't remember that, to be honest with you. Now I'm trying to rack my brain to remember what fight that was. I must have forgotten about that one or missed it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know who it is, but it was a fight for like a championship back in South Africa, whatever their premium organization.
Probably would have been EFC when he was at EFC. He was obviously dominant over in EFC. Then he went to KSW. Then he came to the UFC.
Yeah, and I don't know who the fighter was, but I just remember like watching this like build up, like, oh, you know those videos like watch your mouth in the pre-fight, or the F around and find out. Like, he was like one of the first F around and find out videos I saw, and this was years ago. That was funny. The first time I ever heard of this guy. So then I start playing that looping in my head. I play Sean Strickland in my head. I play the Izzy thing in my head, where I'm just thinking, like, some guys are just masterful at it. All why I think most of the fans think you're a hell of a nice guy.
Yeah, 100%. That's interesting. I didn't know about that. Now I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to do some social media deep dive this afternoon and remember that, because I don't remember that one at all. And I don't remember if I just forgot or if I didn't realize who it was that was involved in it at the time. But he's a great fighter, and he's an exciting fighter. And I mean, again, this is a real rivalry. This is big. There are some serious bragging rights, and man, I'm excited for this fight. It is going to be a tense one. And again, take all that aside and just break down the stylistic nature of it. It's a phenomenal matchup, man. So this is a great fight, man.
I may have it wrong, but I believe it was, I just looked it up, a guy named Yannick Bahati. Yannick Bahati.
It was funny because as I was scanning his record, that was the one that stood out to me. So I kind of do remember there being some tension around that one.
Yeah,
that's funny.
And there's videos of them getting into the guy just like lambasting, saying claims which obviously aren't true, but just trying to rile Dricus up, because Dricus doesn't get riled up.
No, he's too cool, right? You know what I mean? He's good looking dude, built like an Adonis, right? Just like, hey, whatever, man, I'm good. Like, it's all good.
Usually I hate those guys that have everything. But but Dricus just seems like a guy that you like have to like. And aside, I understand the heat everywhere, but whatever. We'll dive into all that next week. Another fun fight, the Kai Kara France, Steve Erceg in 2 weeks. This has got to be a number one contender fight, right? Because if Steve Erceg wins this fight, I think with his performance, he gets a rematch. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's right there. I mean, that division's kind of wide open with the way things have been. But if Erceg wins, I mean, he would certainly have a great case for it, right? I mean, the circumstances that he was given, and to his credit, stepped up and didn't shy away from. I mean, you take those opportunities when they come. He was rushed to a title fight, right? There's no question about it. But this is a meaningful fight against Kai Kara France, a big fight for Kai Kara France as well. It's just, there's some big names still there. You got Brandon Royval. Brandon Moreno's out for a little bit. You got Amir Albazi coming up. That's a big one as well. So I think that's probably another one. Tatsuro Taira's in there. So, I mean, there's some names. but this is big. Those guys are right there in the mix. At worst, the winner of this is fighting in a number one contender fight next. That's at worst. And it could be a title shot, especially because Pantoja, it seems like he wants to fight just like anybody and everybody. Like, he doesn't care. He's like, just give me fights, man. I'm down.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other fights that you're looking forward to on this card? I mean, another one that pops in my head is, well, listen, obviously we know it's going to be a big Australia and New Zealand contingency here. How does Dan Hooker look?
This is a tough test. I mean, Dan Hooker versus Mateusz Gamrot is a great fight. Dan Hooker will fight anybody. That dude, the Hangman, is a blast to watch fight, man. He will go out and absolutely scrap with anybody. He'll accept any challenge. But Mateusz Gamrot is real, man. He is a tough challenge. That's a great fight. That one certainly stood out. I mean, just from a pure fun entertainment value, you got to point out Tai Tuivasa and Jairzinho Rozenstruik, right? I mean, those two guys, they've had some setbacks. I don't know that anybody's on a title run or anything, but in terms of like, hey, man, how about two big dudes that are going to stand in front of each other and throw bombs until somebody falls down? That's a fight. So, I mean, stylistically, those guys get put up against wrestlers, and we're all just like, come on, man, that's not what I came to see. This is going to be, first man to shoot a takedown loses, right? I mean, they're going to stand and trade, and if Tai wins, there is just nothing like the energy from a crowd, and especially in Australia, when Tai Tuivasa wins. I mean, the number of shoes that go into the air with, just trying to volunteer their shoe for the shoey to be used is a sight to behold, and that guy's just a lot of fun. So, that's a big one for sure to look at. Really quick, you want to know how fun this fight is going to be? All right. How fun? I'm going to read some stats for you, or just, some. Okay, 14 wins for Rozenstruik, right? Right. Now, Tai Tuivasa has, I believe, 14 wins. Yeah, 14 wins for Rozenstruik, 14 wins for Tai Tuivasa, 13 knockouts for Rozenstruik, 13 knockouts for Tai Tuivasa, 0 subs for Rozenstruik, 0 subs for Tai Tuivasa, 1 decision for Rozenstruik, 1 decision for Tai Tuivasa. Safe to say, there will not be a submission in this fight, and it is by preponderance of the evidence, there will not be a decision in this fight. Listen, I know we're talking about mixed martial arts, right? That is what MMA stands for, in case anybody wasn't aware. It is mixed martial arts. There's no mixing going on here, right? There's no way that either one of these guys in camp has even bothered with a wrestling practice, right? It's like, bro, you think they even work on clinches? No, absolutely not. They're like, hey, coach, what are we doing today? We got grappling practice this afternoon. Cool. I'll see you tomorrow. Don't need any of that. Bye. I'll be back tomorrow. I mean, like, these dudes are going to stand and throw. I mean, look, what's fun is that these guys will want to do that. You know what I mean? If you were game planning for either one of these guys, you would say, let's shoot a takedown on him. Even if you're one of these guys, if you were just a typical fighter, you would say, well, I know he's going to stand and bang. He's not expecting me to shoot a takedown. I'm going to surprise him. I'm going to take him down. I'm going to beat him up there. But I don't think these two guys think like that. They're like, oh, boy, this dude is going to stand in front of me, and we're going to throw down, and then we're going to make sure this crowd goes nuts, and everybody's going to love it. And maybe we'll get 50 G's for a fight of the night. Maybe I'll get 50 G's for a performance bonus. But we know we're going to bring the crowd to their feet. I think these two dudes are just going to stand and throw bombs. It may not last long, but I think they're going to have fun while it does. There's a combined 28 wins from these two gentlemen. There was a combined 26 knockouts from these two gentlemen. There is a combined 0 subs. That's all you need to know. I mean, the only takedowns are going to be knockdowns. You know what I mean? That's the only way somebody's hitting the ground, right? Knockdowns. I mean, it should be fun. So that'll be a fun fight. Imagine the electricity there too. That's going to be the fight that's opening up the main card. And we've been to pay-per-views before. It's fun all night. But when that main card starts, the energy goes, whoa. And it's so great. I haven't looked at the start time. I know Perth. I've never been to a fight in Perth. I've gone to Sydney and Melbourne and a couple other places down there. And it's great because the fights down in Australia are actually Sunday morning. Perth is actually a few hours west, so I think it's even earlier. So I think the early fights are like very early in the morning, like maybe 6 or 7 a.m. for the first fights, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that main card, that's right about lunchtime or so.
Everybody's been drinking about 7 a.m.
Sure. That's the greatest thing about fight card. Like, normally, like, you go to Sydney and the first fight's like 9:30 in the morning and everybody's hammered already. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I love you guys. Y'all are my type of fans, right? They're there to have a good time, man. So the Sunday morning fights in Australia are amazing. I think these fights are going to deliver. It's a big pay-per-view. Like I said, tension in that main event, but some fun fight cards all the way. And the crowd in Australia is always fantastic, man. They're some of the best fans in the game.
And we'll start breaking down these fights a little more next week. But what you got going on this weekend?
I got a light week this week, which is good. I need that. We'll get caught up. I will be at the UFC Apex show this weekend, so we'll got media day and all that fun stuff that goes along with covering a UFC Apex card here in Las Vegas. But that's pretty light. And then next week's a busy week because actually that's when I'll return to CFFC duties up in Atlantic City. And and then we're off to the races. Cannot wait to announce the Division I college wrestling. I know you're a Division I college wrestling fan. I cannot wait to tell you the matches that we got for CFFC Match Day. We'll be announcing those very, very soon. But I've seen the schedule coming together. There's some big name programs on it. We had some fun events last year. So the fourth quarter is going to be really, really, really fun for us at CFFC. And then also expect the World MMA Awards nominations to be coming out. I'm actually working with those guys now. And we're going to help the World MMA Awards people. I've been a part of it for years and years as a nominated journalist of the year. And now I'm actually working with these guys behind the scenes. And so it's been a fun process of working with them and getting all the award nominations together. And so expecting those all to be announced this week as well. So that's always a fun time. How about you? What you got going?
How can I get on the ballot?
You were not on the ballot. I'm not supposed to announce the nominees yet, even though I know them all. I guess I can say you're not on it this year. I know that may be a big shock to you. You probably thought with that last PFL. But what you have to remember is the nomination period is from July 1st of last year to June 30th of this year. So you probably thought that PFL performance was going to put you up in that top 5, but that's actually on next year's voting period.
No, I expected it even before it.
We got to get you there, man. We got to get you there.
Crawl before I walk and walk before I run. I get it, man. I get it. But I did pass Big John's test. That's all I'm saying.
Did pass Big John's test, man. Hey, that is saying something, man. That's a big step forward. You keep getting these opportunities, man. You'll be up there in those top 5 very soon.
Yeah, I got going on. I will be reffing a Attitude MMA card on the LFA Fight Network YouTube channel this Saturday. I'm pulling double duty. This isn't going to be in Arkansas, West Memphis, Arkansas, which is not too far from Memphis. Right. My first time actually working in Arkansas, so that'd be kind of cool. But I'm going to be commentating the AMI card and reffing the pro card.
I love it. I love it. Double duty, man. That's solid. Showing the well-rounded skill set. Got a little bit of everything.
Man, I love this game. I love it.
I absolutely love it, man. I just so blessed to be a part of this industry, man. I love it. It is literally the best sport on earth, man. There's nothing I'd rather be doing every single weekend.
Sounds good. Well, with that being said, tune in next week when we dive into the UFC 305 DDP versus Izzy. We're going to break it down because we're pretty damn good at that. I think we're probably the best out there. Just saying.
We get you pretty good. Just saying. There haven't been many that we've been way off about. There haven't been many.
There have not. Well, with that being said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.